All right. So are
Uh,
you gonna
and
re-ask?
okay, yes. So I'm just going to start again.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're glad to have you. Thank you so much. Risevest is doing an amazing job. I'm waiting for our merch.
Thank
Anyways, thank you. We're going to ask questions that some PMs have already sent in. And I'll start with the first one from Amaka Amechi. Do you have any preferred means of communication with your PM?
So yeah, preference would be in person, to be honest. Um, but the next best thing outside of in person is usually a Notion documents or some kind of Google document, something that allows you to do a lot of reading, do commenting, and really have like a long version controlled communication, right? So that's the two best ways. Slack is great, but Slack is for like when I just need to ask something real quick and get a response. But when it's something related to work, I prefer to do in person or long form writing, and Notion is great for that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So the next one is from Emanuela Ladipo, and she's asking, how can a PM better communicate prioritized items in the backlog to CEOs who always want their way done first?
I think that's a good question because I'm on that table. Um, so what I find valuable, right, is show me that you understand how or what's how the prioritization you're doing or the way you've prioritized the backlog ties into where the business is and what we're trying to achieve, right? So because what's driving a lot of the time when the CEO is like, this is how I want it done, is not because the CEO always believes, oh, they have the best answers, but it's because the CEO often is thinking from the perspective of not just the product, but the market and whatever the strategic imperative is at that moment. So if a PM can show me that, oh, I understand where the business is or what the market is and where we should be thinking about right now. I get what's happening in the landscape, but this is the best way I believe we can go after that, right? Another way is to show that you have a very strong reason for the way you're prioritizing that is going to work out in the end. So you might be telling me, for instance, don't do this thing that you think is really, really hot or that we really, really need. Because in the long term, if we do this other thing, here's how we still hit that goal, even though we go in different routes. Like, so learn to think about the business as before, like, and then extend that thought into the product. That's my response to that.
Okay, thank you. The next person has two questions. Samuel Oluoke. He's asking, the first question is, how do you manage the up-down approach with product ideation, where the CEO doesn't only manage the product vision, they also manage all the ideas that the PM is working on? Oh, sorry about that. They'll bring the light soon. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. Um, Let me just wait for like 10 seconds.
No worries. All right.
I have a makeshift light. Yeah,
Hey,
there was a
conversation.
generator. Okay. So the first question is, how do you manage the up-down approach with product ideation where the CEO doesn't only manage the product vision, they also manage all the ideas that the PM is working on? How do you draw a balance in this situation as a CEO?
My answer to that is, to be honest, I don't know because, and I'll tell you what I mean. There's a lot of things in that question that I probably need to unpack. When you say up-down approach, what's that? I have no idea. So could you explain, maybe break down the question a little bit more because I don't fully get it.
Okay, so the person who asked the question is here. So Samuel, please can you break down your question so that he can understand what you mean better?
Hi, okay, it's a privilege to hear you
It's
answer
a
some of my
privilege to
questions.
be here as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. So what I meant,
You're
so
muted.
what I meant, right? There is this situation where the CEO ideally is always responsible for product vision, and product managers come on board. They make sure the vision is actualized. But in in addition to product vision, most times the CEO is also the one saying, build this feature, build that feature, build that, build this, build that. So how do you combine that with innovation coming from the PM when the PM is saying, okay, I've spoken to our users and our users also need this. This is the data that our users need. But the PM is, but the CEO is saying, well, for us to be able to raise the next round, our investors also need this, right? So how do you balance that flow of ideas together with the innovation coming from the PM side?
All right. So I'll tell you this because of where we are as a company, we're just getting to that point where the the product development is product development is really not flowing solely from me to the team, right? We're starting to enter that phase where things are bubbling up from the bottom or users. I mean, and that comes, I speak to users a lot. And so even though it's coming from me, it's not necessarily just here's what I think. It's really here's what our users want. So as the product manager, and this is me theorizing a little bit, right? Because it's also speaking to where we're going versus where we've been. But the way I think that you can manage that is as the product manager understands the vision of the product and gets a stronger, and it's not just him. I think the entire product team, so the product designers, sometimes customer service. But once you start developing a strong user voice, where you can now anticipate, because before you get into data, before you start looking at data, you kind of have to have some hypothesis, right? You have to know this is what I think is going on, and then you look for the data that will either prove you right or wrong, or try to understand whether or not that's what the data is telling you. So once the product manager starts to get to that point, which better you are, it shouldn't take very long, right? The more experienced you are, it shouldn't take very long. You will start to come up with insights. And for me, my job is to also listen to those insights and understand how they match with where I know the user should be going. And so I'll be like, oh yeah, that tracks. It makes sense. Like it's taking the user where we all agree the user should go. So let's go ahead and make that happen. So it's a little bit of a back and forth. But over time, as the more the product manager begins to synthesize the user feedback and gets a better sense of where the user is going, more of the ideas should start coming from them. So I think that's the way I would imagine it. We're not perfectly there here as a company, but we're somewhere along that journey. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So the same person is asking his second question. How
Sure.
do you manage ideation and innovation from product managers?
That one is easier to answer. Same way we manage ideation and innovation from every other member of the team, which is we want to hear everyone's thoughts. We want to match it up against what we're here to do for our users. And if it makes sense, then the product manager should aggregate that, right? So that part is, yes, the product manager kind of pulls, and that's my imagination is pulls ideas and thoughts about what to do next. from everywhere in the team. So the CEO is just one other source, right? Other people on the team are also like different sources, and they have their own perspectives as well. And then the product manager, even the product manager should also have them some perspective. But then their job is to then aggregate those and set the direction for how to implement. So in that case, it's the same way that every other person on the team is always asked about, what do you think about this, or what are your ideas, or what are your thoughts regarding what next for the company and for the product. So I don't think that is the exclusive of the CEO. It's something that is asked from everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Samuel. I hope you were satisfied because that's your.
Yeah, very well. Thank you.
Okay, so the next one is from Bridget Iyere. She's asking, how does a PM know when the product vision is aligned with the company's vision?
Whew, that's an interesting question for me. So how do they know when the product vision is aligned with the company's vision? It should be, I mean, it's a bit of a judgment call, but it should be, I don't want to say obvious, but if you're thinking about it, if you really spend a lot of time to think about it, especially if the company's vision is clear, right? So if you're in a company like Google and they're so big that there's a lot of visions all working at once, right? So you can kind of like take the vision of whatever area you're working in, right? So Google's DeepMind, for instance, might have a little bit different vision from, say, Google's Maps or Google's Android ecosystem, but all of them there's a bigger picture connecting all of them. So I think for a PM, if you really have your ear and eyes on what the company's overall vision is, it's very easy to understand when your product fits that vision and when it doesn't. And for startups like us, where we have just one product that is on the market, it's a little bit easier because the company vision and the product vision is identical, at least right now. So this is another one of those questions that I feel like maybe when I've grown up a little bit more as a CEO, maybe my answer will be a little bit more insightful. But for now, I think that knowing as a PM, knowing the company's vision, understanding the product that you're working on, and then making that judgment call, like it's really, there's no book that says when a product does A, B, C, or D, then it's aligned. It's typically like a judgment call, and that comes from how well you understand what the company is trying to do.
Okay, I agree. Thank you so much. The next question is from Christopher Tobe Okolo. He's asking, it is alleged that most product ideas that turn out great come from PMs, while the CEO absorbs the glory, and some products that would have become great are turned down by the CEO because while they sound great, the idea did not come from the CEO. Rather, the CEO repacks the idea and presents it in a different form as his. Do you face similar conflicts? How would you manage that?
So I'm laughing because it's like asking me, would you take credit for would you take credit for the solar? So is Busalami on this call? No, but I'm just the point is, honestly speaking, ideas come from everywhere. Ideas, they're not cheap, especially the more actionable they are, the more valuable they are. But ideas by themselves aren't, I don't know, man. People over index on, who gets credit for coming up with this idea. Anybody can come up with those ideas, right? And it takes a team. So like I said before, not everything that we do as a company is always going to be the CEO's idea. It's going to come from a lot of places. The CEO's job is to orient the organization around whatever idea he believes fits is the best strategic fit. Sometimes that call will be right, and sometimes it'll be wrong, right? So you might say no to something, and it turned out you should have said yes. I've been in. So this is my second company now, and when I was at Bitcoins, when we had conversations around what to do next, there are some things that were like, oh no, that does not make any sense for now. But it turned out in retrospect that was exactly what we should have done, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about whether or not the CEO always picks the right ideas or understands which ideas are the most valuable. Ideas come and go. Orienting an organization towards chasing that singular most important fit is the CEO's job. And if he or she does it well, the company will continue to succeed. And if they don't do it well, at some point, either they or the company would have to find another job, right? So, but coming back to the specific of taking or managing that conflict between the best ideas coming from PMs, I don't think that's an anomaly, right? At the beginning of a company, the CEO or the founders or whoever else might have a lot of grasp of the problem, and so they come up with the best ideas. But as the companies grow, the CEO's job changes. So the PMs coming up with the best ideas is essentially what the PM is supposed to do. But then the credit for it, a CEO that understands his or her responsibility should share credit to everyone on the team. It's not a single person's job. And I'll also be very somehow about a PM that just wants to be credited for the ideas that they bring. So that's my answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. He's on this call, so he has heard the answer.
I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but you really did great. Thanks.
No worries. Thank you very much. That was a good question.
Yeah, very good question. I wanted to ask a question, follow up to that, but let's finish the main questions, and I hope I remember when we're done. So the next question is from Philip. He's asking, why is this is a Risevest related question. Okay, so he's asking the first part of his sentence. I have to reconstruct it because the tenses aren't quite correct. So he's asking why people have different daily return in percentages on their stock and also different percentages monthly return in real estate. So he's asking why the percentages on stock daily return are different from percentage monthly return in real estate.
Well, each plan, so the returns that a user sees is really a combination of several things, right? It's a combination of when did you invest, right? The period that you invested in, the timing of your investment, what the asset is doing at that time, and then the length of your investment holding period. So if, for instance, I come into the market today and our portfolio, so we invest across our portfolio. So if you imagine all of us here all invested in the right stock plan, you would have a basket of identical stocks in the same portfolio, but the timing of your entry into that portfolio differs, right? So if I invested today and then the portfolio was down and you invested tomorrow, but then when the portfolio bounces back, I would just be maybe back to zero or maybe a little bit above where I started from because I've gone down and up. You would come in and just catch it on the upswing. So my returns could be 2%, yours could be 7% because of that difference in when you came in, right? And then if I invested, let's say I invested for 6 months and I'm already halfway through the 6 months when you came in, by the end of that month, you would still have some return, but it might be half or less than half of what I got, right? So there's so many variables And we always encourage people to think of their own account and when they actually made their investments, because your returns in your own account tracks your investment activity, not the next person's. So I can't explain all the details, but I think that gives you a general picture about why there's so much variation in what each person's individual return looks like.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Samuel Ogunkaya. He has three questions, and those are like three sets. So I think I can take that and then say my own question.
Okay, sure.
So the first one is, how should a PM navigate his or her way when there is a disagreement between CEO and CTO or other co-founders?
Omo. So what I would say is take the CEO side. That's my answer. Take the CEO side. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Okay, okay, okay.
this is looking at me like, no. That's totally a joke. I hope you guys know that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
it's tricky because it depends on what the substance of the disagreement is about, right? Disagreements are part of the job. It's normal. If we always agreed, we wouldn't have like the best ideas. Um, so if the CEO and CTO, for instance, are arguing about something that the PM has an opinion on one way or the other, right? Share your honest opinion. If it's something related to product, I hope they're asking you, right? But if it's something, so the way we think about it at Rise is um, whoever, what domain are we arguing about? Or are we discussing about? No matter what our argument is, if it's a tech stack infrastructure conversation, I know that I can argue all I want, but our CTO has the final decision making, right? And if it's a product conversation, then maybe I can win that depending on how high up that product is, or how that decision is. But that's because as of right now, I'm still essentially CEO and kind of like head of products as well, right? So, but if there was someone that it's their job to make the product decisions, then that person should have the final say. But if it's something that the PM himself or herself has a strong understanding of and has a strong opinion on, give your opinion. If not, just maybe just observe and then go back individual and tell each person what you think. But I don't really have like a clear answer for that because that's supposed to happen. Arguments are supposed to happen. You can just wait it out or share your thoughts or just I don't know. So it results in different ways. But if the answer is just whose side should you take, I don't think it's not a sides thing. It's just what's the goal, what can I contribute, and if there's nothing I can contribute, just let it resolve itself.
Okay, thank you. The second one, he said, how should a PM relate when he feels a CEO seems to be a micromanager?
I think you should ask a PM. What do you guys think? What do you guys actually? I should be asking that question. Um,
Oh,
how how do you guys think? How would it help to let a micromanaging see? Because it's always okay. Let me tell you what I think is going on when a CEO is micromanaging, right? So I'm a CEO, so I'm acknowledging my bias. But what's going on? I've been in a position where I'm micromanaging someone, and even I am aware I'm micromanaging them. So I sat down and asked myself, "Why are you?" Because it's not my preferred style. I don't think it's anyone's preferred style. But the times when I've done it, I've realized that it's either of two things going on. One is I know this person is good. I know they are good at their job, but they've not absorbed all the context they need for me to let them make the decisions, make all the decisions. And that's a tricky balance to navigate because for some people, they feel like because I'm great at my job, right? Because I'm great at being a PM and I understand what the product is doing, then just let me do it and just show you the results. But it's like it's not always that easy because what you're not factoring in is the cost when things if things go wrong. Now, because you are still absorbing context, you might have a perfectly rational, perfectly experienced reason for thinking that this is the best way to go. But there's a reason, there's multiple ways things could go, and there might be a reason why that's not the best way right there. So sometimes people are not patient enough to absorb enough context. The second thing I understand when I've been in a position where I'm micromanaging someone is when I watch what they give me, whenever no matter how much someone micromanages, your ideas will come through, your thoughts process would come through at some point. And I understand that there's a disconnect between where I believe we're going versus what this person is giving me, right? And so I realize that if I let them do what they really want to do, we might end up somewhere that we don't want to be. That calls for a conversation. Hey, I'm being micromanaged. What is going on, right? It's not a personality trait. It's just like there's a trust deficit somewhere. So let's have a conversation. What's going on? What is it that I don't understand that you feel I should understand? Or what is it that I do understand, but that I'm not communicating effectively to you? So you guys need to hash out that conversation so that the alignment is clear. Then the last part of it is if you have that conversation and that still doesn't get resolved, then that means that the CEO by himself or herself is either naturally a micromanager, in which case they don't need a product manager, they should go and PM by themselves. Or the PM is not a good fit, right? Which means you should probably have a conversation and let them go. So, but before you get to that point, it's usually a whole lot of other things that are happening upstream. Either the trust is not there, or the PM might be good, but it's not ready to drive, for the wheels to come off and they can just ride by themselves. And sometimes when you judge yourself as ready, it's different from when the CEO who has a little bit more context than you is when they are judging that you're ready, right? So the conversation needs to happen. So but if those conversations happen, if that alignment is achieved and someone is still micromanaging, then either the PM should find another job or the CEO should find another PM. That's how I think about that.
Okay, thank you. The third and last question from this same person: when a product line seems to be failing due to the shortcoming of the vision of a CEO, how should the PM communicate this?
My preferred style is just shoot straight. It's not working, and it's probably because the way you are saying it's not clicking, right? Like nobody is special. Like nobody came out to this world and they dropped their hats on them and poured oil and say, I now anoint you CEO, right? Like you now know all the CEO things. Everybody can like I said, we're figuring things out. So on Rise, there's a feature that we were trying to drive, and it was my idea. I still think it's a great idea, but the mechanics of it haven't been fully figured out. The way I thought about it and the way I wanted us to go about it, we tried to go about it that way. It wasn't working. So we limited it to a few people because we're testing stuff, and then we're gathering data. Now, the data we're gathering on how the few people that are using it, how are they using and all of that, it sits with the PM. So right now, in fact, I had a conversation with Busolami. Should we think about this feature again? And I was like, not yet. One, because there's stuff that is more immediate that we're thinking about. or that we're trying to achieve, but two, because I don't feel like we've really had like, okay, now this is the version of this that is going to work, right? So that's something that we need to put all our focus on. So is it going to be me that will figure out the right implementation of this? Not necessarily, right? Everybody on the team can look at that same data and suggest the ways of going about it, right? So it calls for a little bit of humility. When you say this is how something should work and it doesn't work that way, it happens. It's life. Life is more complex than anybody can predict. And if someone else comes up with a better way of going about it, they should be able to tell the CEO. And if they can't, that's a problem. Sorry, I like this again. If an intern that joined Rise today has better insight into a solution, best believe I'm gonna call them out to the front. You better explain to the rest of us how this solution should work so that we implement it. At the end of the day, all that matters is results. It's not the CEO, it's not the PM, it's the results. So yeah, that's it. If the CEO is wrong, tell him or her, you're wrong. That's the way I give feedback. That's the way I'd like to receive it. It's like, don't paint around the issue. This is bullshit. Sorry. I mean, maybe don't say bullshit, right? But it sucks, and we've done it your way, and it sucks. Let's do it this other way, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you. So I had a follow-up question to that other question that Christopher asked. So I'm done with the questions. So let me just let that be my question. So
Okay.
talking about giving glory to the product manager for bringing up a certain idea that's now maybe even made like other goals of the company to move forward, like everybody was just so excited. How, apart from saying I want to thank my team for the great work you guys are doing, do you have like a specialized way, or is the person going to get a compensation? Are you just going to say thank you very much for your great idea, God bless you, handshake? Is there any special reward, or it's just a, oh wow, that was a great idea, it moved us from $2 billion revenue or profit to
Amen.
18 God. So are you just going to say thank you, PM, you have done a great work, God will bless you, and then handshake and then t-shirts?
So there's this useful and really handy invention that is called a bonus. Those things tend to be handy, you know. That's a way of saying thank you with, they'll press something into your hand. That's part of the way of saying thank you. So a bonus is a good way of saying, especially if that thing moves the needle as much as what you just described. If it really moves the needle, accelerates the company, best believe a bonus is definitely a good idea. Beyond the recognition, recognition is important. Also, giving that credit is important. If it's something, it contributes also to your career acceleration, right? So definitely you now have more responsibility if you show that you can perform at that level. But I'm a big believer in rewarding the team. If you do something immediately actionable that accelerates the business, give them a bonus. Also, when people consistently at Rise, we have that as a policy. So we have an ESOP, a stock plan, right? That basically allows you to get, as part of your compensation, to get equity as part of your compensation. But beyond that, beyond the ESOP, even I tell most of the team knows this, that if you come in and you really contribute to the business, right, you really help drive the business forward meaningfully, you're going to get equity grant, like not one you have to pay for with a stock option. It's like, we're going to say, okay, here's this slice of equity that we're going to give to you because you're contributing to the growth of this business. And maybe there will be a time when we might not be able to make calls like that anymore because maybe we've hit a certain size. But for now, it's all part of the way we think about it, where if people are contributing to something, to creating value, you want them to also, meaningfully participate in that value. I mean, that's my policy. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we have 3 people raised their hand,
Sorry,
and
just
we have.
just to say something else before I move on from that. Despite what I've just said, there's also you have to avoid making the other mistake of coming in with a bit of entitlement, because really when you're hired to be part of a team, right, it's all of you, right, that you should be, if you're especially if you're committed to the mission of that team, going above and beyond just what you're paid to do is part of the job, right? So I also don't want to create a scenario where someone just feels like, oh, if I do this, when people start counting the business's P&L, oh, I contributed this much to the P&L, what, it's like, don't do that either. But yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So 3 people raised their hands. I believe we have a question and we have time. So we're just going to take from the first person who raised his hand and then the last person. So after Nonso, Christopher, and then Ario also Fuye. I'm so sorry if I murdered your name, please. Sorry about that. Nonso, please.
Yeah, hi, Eke. So I just have like 2 questions. So my first question is, where do you see Risevest in 5 years? Like, when do you see Risevest in 5 years as a product? Okay, then let's make it 3. Then 2, are you currently solving Risevest as a product? Are you currently solving the user's problem? You understand? Because for every product, a user comes for a product to solve a particular problem. So are you currently, do you think Risevest is at that point where by solving the user's problem effectively? Then my third question is that there are what we call CAC, customer acquisition costs. There are what we call CAC, customer acquisition costs. So do you think that as Risevest, based on everything, your marketing and everything, the cost of gaining a particular, do you think that the cost of gaining a particular user, do you think is low enough for like easy accessibility for the user to come into the product to the product to basically sell itself, meaning that the cost of acquiring the user is very low? For example, now you have Facebook, the cost of acquiring a user for Facebook is very, very minimum and very, because everybody hears about Facebook. So this arises at that point whereby the cost of acquiring a particular customer is very low and the product is growing organically and marketing itself organically. So those are my 3 questions.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to try to remember that. The 3, I'm a bit, I space out sometimes. So the first thing you asked was, where do I see Rise?
Yeah, Risevest in 5 years. Yeah.
In 5 years, or maybe even 3. So one of the things we always think about seriously is, what are we doing for our customers? What are we doing for our users, right? What is the real need that we're solving for them? And if we solve that problem well, then as the user goes, so does the product, right? So in 3 to 5 years, what I see is that, or what I hope is that we're more of a household name, right? We're basically the way people think about solving this particular problem. Like when you think about Rise, it doesn't feel like, oh, this new amazing thing that you've just heard. It's like, of course you use Rise. Like that's just, you're supposed to, right? That's what I think. It's like, if you come and tell me now that you use Google to search the internet, like, am I going to be shocked by that? Like, no, of course you use Google. Like, that's, what else are you supposed to do? That's what I hope that Rise can achieve. And obviously achieve that for as many people as we can. So that's the first, that's the answer to that question. And it takes a lot of work to get there. So the second question you asked, I don't remember, but the third one is about our CAC. The good thing is we're still early in our journey, right? So Rise went public in January 2020. So we started as Cash Estate in 2019, ran that for a while and cut that because we gathered the insights we needed. And we built the mobile product in November, and then it was in beta in December, and then we launched publicly in January, right? So We've done a decent amount over the last year and a half, but we've mostly still acquired users organically, and with some like incentivized referral. I think the only place that we actually spend some money is the referral bonus that we pay to people that bring in paying customers. Most of every other thing that we've done has been, on social media or we're tweeting or whatever, but we've not done like paid marketing. You haven't seen our ads. I think we've started experimenting. So we experimented with ads when we're doing Techstars, mostly to learn. But we've also now started putting together and testing out like something. So we promote a post on Instagram. We're still learning. Oh yeah, you asked about whether we've solved the.
I'm sorry. Okay, sorry for cutting. I want to change that second question. Just I want to change this. So the question will be: do you sleep at night based on the regulators, like Nigerian regulators? So my question is like, how do you sleep at night? Like based on Nigerian regulators and the kind of dynamic policy we have in this country, whereby you see, I remember the last time with the issue with the SEC saying that. Secretary Commission saying that people that investment companies need to have like a kind of license and everything. So, like, how do you sleep at night? That's my question. Yeah,
I like. So Nigeria is a strategically challenging environment. I think everyone can admit that, right? So, like I was saying, that I'm growing premature gray hair, but I don't know if it's actually premature since I'm 31. But I've grayed in the last. Since I've been running Rise, right? Because it's tasking, and things are always changing, and you're always having to figure out again and again and again and again how to keep operating and how to keep building and growing in this environment. But it's part of the job. It's not my first rodeo. It probably won't be my last, because let's just put it like this. For you to be a founder, it's almost like you have to have a high emotional stress threshold, right? So it's part of the job. We manage it as best as we can. The team helps, investors help, everyone helps, because we all know, even the regulators themselves would also tell you, in some cases, we know that this is crazy and all, but again, we're trying to do it for so and so reason. So nobody is all out coming to say, oh, we want to like come for your neck. But it's like for a lot of different reasons, you still have to go through all of this, all this back and forth constantly. It's part of the job. It's part of the environment. I think it will probably be like that for as long as I can see, because companies way bigger than us are still dealing with that. So if you had to worry too much about that, you wouldn't even start a fintech company at all. But yeah, thanks. Those are pretty helpful questions. And so going back, finishing up with the CAC question, I'm comfortable where we are. As the company grows, and as we start to do more like experimentation or spend more money on marketing, that CAC will invariably go up. But again, our goal is to keep it within a manageable range. And that comes from building such an excellent product that, again, the mechanics of getting on it is super easy. So I hope, I don't know if Busolami is on this call, but again, even our PM has a role to play in making sure that the product itself doesn't cost us a lot to sell. So thanks for your very insightful questions.
Thanks so much, Eke. Thank you.
Yeah, Nonso, I'm going to warn you for the last time. This was PMCO relationship. Product question. It's on record. Let it be on record that I have won Nonso publicly. Thank you very much for answering that question. So we'll just go to Christopher and then Ario. I see Bridget has also raised her hand, so I hope we have time to answer Bridget's question as well.
All right. I'll try to make my answers real quick.
So when you mentioned the emotional, you wanted so because that's
You're
what
breaking.
Christopher, you're breaking. We can't hear you properly.
Or Christopher, what you do is that maybe you should just
Oh,
off your video, switch off your video so the
Hold
network
on.
is better. Yeah.
how about now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good.
All right. So when you mentioned emotional threshold, I wanted to add emotional shock absorber because that's what you keep getting from Nigeria, shocks left and right. But what I wanted to ask, when you mentioned the innovation called bonuses, I also added equity before you now mentioned it. But then are you not concerned that that might also create rife among the PMs or among those who are aspiring to be PMs, those who want to rise up to the ladder to be recognized as product managers? And then how much slice are you willing to keep cutting off shares to each of the PMs that brings up a very innovative or a very profitable idea on the table? And then this
So,
also
yeah,
to the action.
that's a very good question.
Some might also, yeah, just go ahead, hit it.
So the way we think about it is you make room for at least several people who will be very helpful towards the evolution of the products, right? And the business. You make room for not just today's needs, but also the future needs. You anticipate a little bit. But at some point, you really cannot help or you cannot give equity to everyone. It's not physically possible unless you don't want to raise additional rounds of funding. But what you do is you know the key people, you know the limits that you can accommodate, and then you try to judge very wisely about how to hand those out. And then you also don't worry too much about, like, I'm a big fan of not solving tomorrow's problems today, right? Like, you can focus on today's problems. By the time you get to that bridge, you find a way around it, right? And you can never solve that problem perfectly. So some people will just have to understand that, maybe this is not, isn't, I'll have to find another way of also like participating in that value. Or maybe, I don't, there's multiple ways, but it just can't be that I'll start to worry about, why can I reward this person? What if I run out of ways to reward the 50th person that's going to come down the line? It's like, when we get to that point, we'll figure it out.
Christopher, are you okay with the answer?
Good. I mean, I have a lot, but we don't have time. Let me allow other people to also chip in as well.
Okay,
So
okay,
thank you. You did a great job.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, Ario, please. Ario.
All right.
Sorry.
Ariyo. All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Eke. So I have just only one question, but when Noso made mention of CAC, and I was just reading about it yesterday, so I just wanted to just rephrase a little bit. So that would be the first question, and my own question. So now, talking about the CAC, customer acquisition, I was just reading about product-led growth yesterday, and then the CAC team popped up. So I just, in addition to Noso's question, do you think Risevest is at the stage of product-led growth at the moment? As in, is Rice actually selling itself at the moment? Is the product actually acquiring customers for itself at the moment? That's the first question. Then the second question is basically more of an advice. So I've been a business person all along, and I've been a relationship manager for the past 4 years or so. So I'm just transitioning into product management. So I basically have enough knowledge right now. But at the same time, when you were answering Samuel Ogukoya's second question, you made mention of PM fit, like when a PM is actually fit for the particular product and for the particular job in question. And that thing actually, when I was jotting down, I actually was thinking, because I've been seeing lots of job posting about PM all these days, and I see some saying we need a PM with metric experience, we need a PM in fintech, we need a PM in management, real estate management, and all that. So I was just thinking, is there I know, as in, is there a dual an all size fits all experience a PM should have in order to function in whatever role he or she finds himself on the job.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take the second question first. Um, Again, my answer to that is honestly, I don't know. I've not hired that many PMs. Um, the PM that really started our journey with us, he came in because he had a relationship with my CTO, and then he loved what we were building so much that he had another job. He was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be doing this PM thing for you people, essentially for free." And at some point, I'm like, I don't like the fact that he's doing this thing for free. Let me be paying him small, so because this is before we raised, right? So we're bootstrapping, and I was just paying him out of pocket until we eventually raised like our pre-seed, and then I hired him full time, right? So it wasn't like I interviewed him and asked about, and then he delivered a lot on the task and helped grow the product to where we are today, right? And I never like to talk about where we are because we're just starting. We're literally just starting. So even I have so much to learn about how to hire good PMs. Recently had to hire a new one, and there wasn't a lot of like metrics, anything. I saw Busayo from CC Hub. I think you might know her because you guys were discussing about this community, and I saw Busalami under that Twitter thread, and I asked her some questions, and then I sent her to my PM and said, talk to this person, and if she's a great fit, hire her. And so we basically trained her into the role that she has right now. So when it really comes down to what are the things that PMs or aspiring PMs should really make sure that they have a good grasp of for the different tasks that they would want to take on. I don't know. I don't know. I'm really learning, right? So, but I know people that I could ask questions and they can give me some insights on that. But I'm just telling you, if I tell you that here, I'm bullshitting. The other question that you asked about whether Rise is at that point where it's selling itself. First, I think investment products is a little bit harder to do product-led growth with investment products. There are some products that give themselves easier to that, like maybe a payments product because I can send money to you, or there's a hook, right? Or there are other products where you can easily build a hook. But Rise we're thinking along those lines now. We're not there yet. We're just now thinking about how do we start building the kind of product that would make acquiring customers an organic part of the product. If you guys have strong ideas about how we can achieve that, maybe you'll just be getting that bonus from me because we're at that discovery phase. But yeah, I don't think we're there yet. I think we're still at that point where it's our marketing, it's our ads, it's our user referrals that might drive people to us. But hopefully we'll figure out a way to make it where the product itself drives people to us. So thanks.
Yeah, we're at 8 o'clock now. I don't know if you have a few more minutes to answer Bridget's question.
Yeah.
Question.
I can do like almost another 15 minutes, or hopefully we don't. I don't know. I have some time.
No. I'm hoping Bridget Fikayo, please let your question be very brief because we're supposed to end now, but we're giving you the time to ask your question. So yeah, Bridget, go ahead, please.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Kay. Thank you for coming today. My question basically is about the PM CEO relationship. So, if you are in a company where the CEO is like the major driver, I don't know, like driver for the product, like it can make decisions at any given time concerning the product, like to pivot at any point in time without actually taking proper advice
Sounds
or doing
chaotic.
proper. Sorry.
Sounds chaotic.
Yeah, proper user research. And as a PM, because it's the CEO, you have to like go with his idea, and you can't really like get him to see points from like the PM standpoint. Like, how do you work with such a CEO? Like, how do you make him see things from the PM product management standpoint? Like, you don't just make decisions based on how you think the product should work. Yeah, so that's like a question.
Yeah. So I think the way to think about that is what stage is that company? At the very beginning of the company, you can make a lot of those kind of snap decisions. This is where we think we should go. Let's go there, right? As the company starts to take shape, as the product starts to take shape and gain a base of users, it's much more actionable to get your insights from your users, whether it's just by someone calling them or by aggregating data or whatever. But talk to the customers. Let the customers be the ones that are really driving what the product is doing. Um, but the other thing I would say is, depending on the domain that we're talking about, it's always good to have a balance between um, product intuition, which comes maybe from the CEO, maybe it's from someone that has a lot of domain expertise, being able to be into it where the product should go next, and balance that with also user-generated data or user-generated feedback, because sometimes it's the customer's feedback that will drive. Sometimes it'll be just sheer product intuition. And so what I don't want people to also do is um, over index on one side. So if you now say, oh, everything has to be done from user surveys and data analysis and you become predictable somewhat, right? Because everyone knows something about how to talk to those same users and figure out those same needs and aggregate those same insights into a certain product, right? So it still requires someone with a deep level of understanding and intuition to say, you know what, I see this, but let's go here. So that those two tensions have to be held in balance, and it's a tricky thing to do, but it has to constantly be done. That's why otherwise you at some point you don't even. Why do you still need a founder to drive or a leader to drive? You can just synthesize data, aggregate it into a decision, and then do it, right? But the reason why you always founder-led companies always tend to outperform is because there's someone at the top that still has that intuition and constantly works to maintain and develop that intuition. So you have to balance both of those tensions.
Yes, okay, so we know these things, but like the CEO is like getting it. So how does it like the PM get the CEO to see things from this picture, from this standpoint?
If your CEO thinks that your opinion as a PM is useless, don't work for that CEO. Like, I don't understand. There's no two ways about it. If you can't seriously tell your CEO what your thoughts are and have him or her listen and actually take that into consideration, why are you there? Why are you a PM? Like, your PM is not to just like take
Really, so
right. So that speaks to a deeper problem. If you're a product manager, it's because there's something you know or you do, and they're out of that process. Ideas are gonna come out. So if a CEO does not listen to any of them, or just says, "Oh, we're gonna do it like this," no feedback necessary, that's very worrying, and I wouldn't be there.
okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bridget. Fikayo, please.
All right, good evening, everybody. Hello.
Good evening.
All right, good evening, Eke. So my question has to do with product vision. Um, I'm going to use Google as an example. Google's product mission is to organize the world's information, and make it accessible to everyone. And you can see it in how they develop their products. So my question is, what is Rise mission statement, and how does it drive or guide your product strategy or development? And in the event you work in a company where the mission is like not defined or is not clear, as a PM, do you drive the conversation? How do you handle that type of situation?
Right. So Rise's mission, our mission statement is to connect our users to the best investment opportunities around the world. And the vision is basically we're providing stress-free wealth management. Beyond that, so going back to the name of the company, we're really trying to see people. So we sell three things in my opinion, and I think most people in Rise will agree because we talk about it a lot. It's freedom, financial freedom, personal freedom, the ability for anybody to achieve financial and personal freedom, right? And also really just elevation. So that's where the name Rise comes from. Doesn't matter where you join the Rise train, we know for sure that we can help you level up, right? So if you are making decisions at Rise, and from a user standpoint, we can see how this helps a user improve or increase their financial or personal well-being, whether it's through knowledge. It's going back to our communities. The reason we spend a lot of time on user education and financial education is because you have to know what you're doing financially for you to make the right decisions. So everything that we do is really tied towards connecting people to wealth creating opportunities, wherever those opportunities may be. And the goal is for our users to be able to rise from wherever they find themselves into a higher level or achieve certain freedoms, financially or otherwise. Now, if that's what, like if you're working at a company and you don't know what the North Star is, then everything is your job, and at the same time, nothing is your job, right? So it's like you can build anything, you can build any kind of product, you can decide, and it's like, I don't know how that would work in effect, but you kind of need to filter on something. You have finite resources, finite time, and for Rise, the first thought is not just whatever makes us money. That's not. It's really not. Like money is like the maybe third consideration. The very first thing is just what helps our user connect to the opportunity that they need to connect to, or what can we open up for them? How can we help them connect to a wealth creating opportunity, whether through knowledge, whether through investments, whether through just being part of a community? And then secondly, how does that translate to our products? And then maybe third. Maybe it's not even third, it might be fourth. So I don't know what it feels like to be at a company that doesn't have a North Star. So I can't really advise someone on how to handle a situation like that. Because I imagine that there's a reason someone decided, of all the things that I'm going to do with myself, is this one thing. You know, when you started that company, you know that there's one thing you're trying to achieve. Maybe it's not well articulated, but it has to be there. If it's not there, that'll be weird. So that's my perspective. Maybe not the most professional, but again, it's just how it is. Like, why don't you have a mission, fam? Like, that's, yeah, I don't know. I can't compute in my head.
All right, thank you so much. I'll finish what I want to say. It's be 10 minutes. So thank you very much for the extra 10 minutes you gave us. I had such a nice time today. Some people asked their questions and then they left. Some other people stayed here till the end. Thank you everyone for joining today. I really appreciate this. Thank you very much, Eke. I learned a lot just from hearing the question, because I'm a product manager, I have a CEO as well. So I'm hoping that we're going to have a better relationship after this meeting, just going back like maybe over the recording and just listening over and over again. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you everyone as well. So this is the end. We've come to the end of the program, webinar, question and answer. Thank you very much once again, Eke. We really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. This was interesting. This was fun. Now I know a bunch of product managers that I can go to when I also need some insights about whatever. So thank you guys.
Thanks so much, Eke. Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Princess, you're not getting anywhere.
No, so well done. No. You must ask like 50 questions every time.
Yeah,
When
I'm
you
a
say
soft guy.
Are you